now turn to Iowa, where we have a story involving two Black Lives Matter protesters who are facing a rare leak charge. What's happening in Iowa?
So this is coming from the Associated Press, and this is a rather remarkable story. So I'll just go through different parts of the story here from the Associated Press and give some commentary. So that according to the AP, there are two protesters who are charged with unauthorized dissemination of intelligence data, a felony that carries up to 5 years in prison. So first off, unauthorized dissemination of intelligence data. I mean, that sounds like a crime that we would, or an alleged offense that would be brought against someone under the Espionage Act, like they might be working at the NSA or they might be at the CIA. But we're just talking about a police department. We're talking about the Des Moines Police Department in Iowa. And the Iowa Judicial Branch says it is only the second time that the charge has been filed since 2010, according to the AP. It's intended to punish officers and others who share information that could undermine criminal investigations or violate privacy protections. The document in question was a bulletin that officers and state troopers had with them while patrolling a July 1st protest at the Iowa Capitol. This bulletin included photos of suspects who were wanted in the destruction of a Des Moines police car during a June 20 protest. I've seen these bulletins before. Haven't you seen these bulletins, Brian?
Mm-hmm.
They're routinely released from Freedom of Information Act requests. They are, if these contain wanted photos, typically wanted photos are made public anyway because the police want help from the public in catching these alleged suspects. So generally speaking, without commenting on the specific crime, because I have no idea what really went down, although it's described in a bit of detail here in this AP story, which I'll get to it. But generally speaking, a bulletin that mentioned that they were looking for a person, I would think that would be public information that they would want out there so that the police could go use these details in order to catch the suspects. So they mentioned that Alexandria Dia, 26 years old, took this intelligence bulletin from an officer's back pocket during a confrontation between officers and protesters, which began after officers arrested 3 of the suspects inside the Capitol. This is alleged in the criminal complaint. Obviously, we can't take that as completely true, but this is the version of events that prosecutors are putting forward to go after these 2 Black Lives Matter protesters. They say then that the protesters gathered at a county jail to demand the release of those arrested during the protest. And then 21-year-old Viet Tran discussed and displayed the bulletin during an interview that was broadcast on WOI-TV, which is an ABC affiliate. The first page of the 4-page document has a notice warning that it shouldn't be shared or released publicly, and that doing so would violate Iowa code. Well, I'm not familiar with this code, but this isn't classified information. States don't have classified information, so this seems rather absurd. And even the spokesperson for the Des Moines Police Department, his name's Sergeant Paul Perazek, says that it was difficult to assess whether any harm resulted from its dissemination, which is usually the case, actually, when you see disclosures not just from, in this instance, a state law enforcement agency, but also just the national agency, any federal government agency. That's typically the case, that they can't produce evidence of harm. But the sergeant says such bulletins contain confidential information, such as driver's license numbers, that must be protected under the law. However, I'll point out here that there isn't anything mentioned in this article about the protesters reading driver's license numbers or anything related, anything remotely close to, I don't know, the kind of information that the St. Louis mayor read. Remember in the last week or so, there was a huge scandal because she read these comments from her own residents or her own constituents, and was accused of doxing them because she read their identifying information, which is the kind of thing that the police department is saying they'd like to protect from being disclosed in this document. It's also interesting that if you read further down in the AP report, there's a section that mentions that they're not going to go after the reporter, and the reporter has a right to publish this information, and the local affiliate is unfortunately very silent about this leak prosecution. So I think that just shows you something that's very common, which is that you get silence. You get radio silence from establishment reporters or these media institutions. They should be speaking out and saying that it's unconscionable to go after people with this kind of a law. It was apparently tried one other time previously, and that case didn't succeed. It ended up that the person pled to an unrelated and lesser severe charge. But these are felonies. These are felonies that these two protesters are accused of. Then they could potentially end up in prison for up to 5 years. And what we're talking about here seems very frivolous, and it's clearly to make an example out of people. But I'm not really sure why they're being made an example, because it's not like they stopped the police from being able to capture or arrest any of these people involved in the destruction of a police car.